It all began, as many colossal disasters often do, with a seemingly innocuous event. A xenobiologist by the name of VZE, whose antennae perpetually twitched with a subtle nervousness, stumbled upon a strange human broadcast. The transmission, harmlessly titled Top 5 Hair Care Tips, was intercepted while VZE was examining Earth's atmospheric composition, specifically to guarantee his species steered clear of the planet. The xenobiologist had long categorized Earth as a level N death world, a place where the indigenous life forms were either poisonous, sharp, or unexpectedly proficient at launching projectiles. Yet, curiosity, as it so often does, proved to be a relentless and unforgiving taskmaster. The instant VZE opened the file, the universe took a minor, but perceptible, shift towards utter pandemonium. "Play it again," squeaked Labor, a junior research assistant whose specialty was, quite unfortunately, panicking. He gripped the edge of his console tightly with all four of his hand equivalents, his greenish complexion fading to a pale turquoise. The video replayed. A human female, smiling as though oblivious to the fact she was wielding what resembled a miniature sun, lifted a device that looked suspiciously like a small cannon. It whirred to life, emitting a stream of intensely hot air, while her hair danced wildly in the manufactured gale. She seemed pleased, as if completely unaware that the device could potentially cause serious burns. Why? Why would they construct such a contraption? Labor stammered. It must be a weapon, VZE declared, his voice trembling with a certainty born entirely of unfounded speculation. He paused the recording and magnified the image of the device, focusing on the human text that read Turbo X Pro 3000 hair dryer. Note the name, VZE continued, his voice rising in pitch. Turbo, clearly a militaristic term. Max, a threat, maximum power. Pro, professional grade destruction. And the 3000? Labor inquired, his voice barely a whisper. The number of victims per second, VZE breathed solemnly. This was no mere appliance, it was a precursor to annihilation, cleverly disguised as a tool for personal grooming. Within hours, the xenobiologist High Council was in a state of complete disarray. A hastily arranged meeting was called aboard the flagship Prudent Retreat where delegates floated in transparent orbs filled with a soothing liquid meant to alleviate anxiety, a precaution rendered entirely ineffective by the current crisis. This thermal weapon poses a danger not only to us, but to the entire galactic community, bellowed Chief Arbiter Quilk, who held the distinguished title of Most Alarmed xenobiologist for 5 consecutive years. First they create it for hair, what next? Will they weaponize their nail clippers? We shouldn't rush to conclusions, interjected Dr. Porp, who had long championed observation over immediate evacuation. Perhaps this apparatus is benign. Benign? Quilk's voice cracked. If it's harmless, why does it generate temperatures capable of instantly vaporizing a Gulen ice spider? The council gasped collectively. No one had ever managed to vaporize a Gulen ice spider, not even the Gulens themselves. Porp sighed and activated the holographic display. Observe the recording meticulously. The scene played out once more. The human woman, unaware of the galactic panic she had induced, flipped a switch, and the device hummed. Her hair, now a chaotic display of physics, seemed to shimmer in defiance of all natural laws. She concluded the demonstration with a thumbs-up gesture. Quilk's sphere darkened to a deeper shade of orange, a telltale sign of escalating hysteria. That gesture. A symbol of domination. It's a sign of approval, Porp corrected, though his tone lacked confidence. I demand an inquiry. Quilk announced. We will dispatch a delegation to Earth to examine this atrocity firsthand. We will demand explanations and possibly a restraining order. The declaration was met with hesitant agreement. No one wanted to visit Earth, but no one wanted to be held accountable for disregarding what was clearly a potentially catastrophic situation. A small team was assembled, VZE, the overly enthusiastic discoverer of the footage, Labor, who had already stowed himself inside his escape pod, and Porp, who muttered darkly about second-guessing his career path. Their mission was straightforward: infiltrate Earth, observe the hazardous thermal device, and ascertain whether humans were plotting to incinerate the galaxy deliberately, or, more likely, accidentally. As the Prudent Retreat prepared for its voyage to Earth, Quilk issued a final caution. Do not underestimate the humans. They reside on a world where fire falls from the sky, their oceans are teeming with apex predators, and they willingly consume molten cheese on bread. These creatures are unbalanced. VZE swallowed hard. Labor whimpered. Porp adjusted his floating sphere, pondering whether retirement on a tranquil asteroid moon was still a viable option. With engines humming nervously, the Prudent Retreat vanished into the vast expanse of space, leaving behind only questions, apprehension, and the lingering realization that the galaxy might be wholly unprepared for the sheer strangeness that awaited them on Earth. The Prudent Retreat emerged from hyperspace just beyond Earth's orbit, humming like an overworked appliance. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. VZE clung to his console, scanning for immediate dangers, asteroids, radiation, or worse, humans wielding their heat cannons. Labor, meanwhile, had sealed himself inside his emergency pod, peering out through a tiny window. Dr. Porp floated in the center of the command sphere, exuding an aura of profound exasperation. We've traversed half the galaxy, he said, addressing no one in particular, to investigate a device humans use on their heads. If we survive this, I'm taking a sabbatical. Assuming sabbaticals still exist after they set the galaxy ablaze. They won't set the galaxy ablaze, Porp replied, massaging his temples. They'll singe it, at worst. After several cautious orbits, the delegation decided to initiate contact. VZE proposed a prudent approach, land in a secluded area, observe the humans from a safe distance, and perhaps transmit an automated message requesting they kindly refrain from incinerating anyone. This idea was swiftly rejected by Porp, who pointed out that humans were unlikely to heed requests from a delegation too frightened to disembark their spaceship. So, naturally, they landed in the middle of a bustling human settlement. Their craft descended into a parking area behind a building labeled Hare Haven, its neon sign flickering ominously. VZE squinted at the lettering. Why would they designate a building a haven for hare? Because the hare must seek refuge, Labor whispered, his antennae quivering. That's preposterous, Porp muttered, though not entirely out of character for this species. Labor, a junior research assistant whose primary expertise, unfortunately, was succumbing to panic, squeaked, "Replay it." His forehand-like appendages clutched the console's edge, his greenish hue paling to a sickly turquoise. The video began anew. A human female, beaming as though unaware she wielded what seemed like a miniature sun, brandished a gadget resembling a small cannon. The device whirred to life, expelling a torrent of scorching air, her hair swirling in the artificial wind. She appeared pleased, as though completely oblivious to the device's potential to inflict serious burns. But why? Why construct such an instrument? Labor stammered. It's a weapon, VZE proclaimed, his tone trembling with a conviction based solely on conjecture. He froze the recording, enlarging the image of the apparatus, focusing on the human script, Turbo X Pro 3000 hair dryer. Observe the nomenclature, VZE elaborated, his voice rising. Turbo, a patently martial term. Max, a clear threat, maximum power. Pro, signifying professional-grade devastation. But the 3000? Labor whispered, his voice barely audible. Casualties per second, VZE exhaled gravely. It wasn't a mere tool, but a portent of destruction, cunningly masked as a personal grooming implement. Within a matter of hours, the Xenobiologist High Council was in complete pandemonium. A hastily convened assembly aboard the flagship Prudent Retreat saw delegates suspended in transparent globes, immersed in a soothing fluid intended to quell anxiety, a precaution rendered wholly ineffective by the prevailing crisis. This thermal instrument presents a danger not just to us, but to the entire galactic community, roared Chief Arbiter Quilk, who for 5 years running had held the prestigious title of Most Anxious Xenobiologist. They create this for hair, what's next? Weaponized nail clippers? Let's not leap to conclusions, Dr. Porp interjected, a longtime advocate for observation over hasty retreat. This apparatus might be harmless. Harmless? Quilk's voice cracked. If harmless, why the temperatures capable of instantaneously vaporizing a Gulen ice spider? A collective gasp swept through the council. Vaporizing a Gulen ice spider was a feat no one, not even the Gulens themselves, had ever accomplished. Porp sighed, activating the holographic display. Examine the recording with precision. The scene repeated itself. The human woman, unperturbed by the galactic panic she had ignited, toggled a switch, and the device hummed. Her hair, now a chaotic spectacle of physics, shimmered in seeming defiance of natural law. The demonstration concluded with a thumbs-up gesture. Quilk's sphere darkened to a more intense orange, a clear indication of his escalating anxiety. The gesture! A blatant display of power! It's a sign of approval, Porp corrected, his voice lacking conviction. I'm ordering an inquiry, Quilk declared. We shall dispatch a delegation to Earth to examine this abomination firsthand. We will demand explanations, and perhaps a protective injunction. The proclamation was met with reluctant assent. Nobody wished to venture to Earth, but neither did they want the responsibility for ignoring what appeared to be a potentially apocalyptic scenario. A small team was assembled, VZE, the overzealous discoverer of the video, Labor, who had already retreated to his escape pod, and Porp, who grumbled under his breath about his questionable career choices. Their mission was simple: infiltrate Earth, observe the hazardous thermal instrument, and determine if the humans intended to incinerate the galaxy on purpose, or, more plausibly, by accident. As the *prudent retreat readied itself for the voyage to Earth, Quilk issued a final admonition. Do not underestimate these humans. They dwell on a world where burning debris falls from the sky, their oceans swarm with terrifying predators, and they willingly consume melted cheese on toasted bread. These creatures are unstable. VZE gulped nervously. Labor whimpered audibly. Porp shifted in his floating orb, contemplating the viability of retirement on a quiet asteroid moon. With engines humming anxiously, the prudent retreat vanished into the vastness of space, leaving behind only uncertainty, apprehension, and the growing realization that the galaxy might be utterly unprepared for the sheer peculiarity that awaited them on Earth. Emerging from hyperspace just outside Earth's orbit, the prudent retreat hummed like an overworked kitchen appliance. Inside, the tension was palpable. VZE, glued to his console, scanned for imminent threats, asteroids, radiation bursts, or even worse, humans brandishing their thermal weapons. Labor remained sealed inside his escape pod, observing the world outside through a small window. Dr. Porp floated in the command sphere's center, radiating an aura of utter exasperation. We've crossed half the galaxy, he said, his words directed at no one in particular, to study a device humans utilize on their heads. I'm taking a sabbatical if we live through this. Presuming sabbaticals are still an option after they've potentially scorched the galaxy. Labor's voice piped up from within the confines of his escape pod. They won't incinerate the galaxy. They won't incinerate the galaxy, Porp conceded, massaging his temples wearily. They'll scorch it, at worst. After completing several cautious orbits, the delegation decided to establish contact. VZE suggested a prudent strategy: land in a remote location, observe the humans from a safe distance, and perhaps transmit an automated communication requesting they kindly refrain from incinerating anyone. This thermal instrument, a potential menace not only to us but to the galactic community at large, caused the Xenobiologist High Council to descend into utter chaos within hours. Aboard their flagship, the prudent retreat a hastily convened gathering saw delegates floating within transparent spheres filled with a calming liquid designed to mitigate anxiety, a measure rendered completely futile by the gravity of the current predicament. Chief Arbiter Quilk, holder of the distinguished Most Anxious Xenobiologist title for 5 consecutive years, bellowed, "This thermal weapon jeopardizes the entire galaxy. First, they develop it for hair. What follows? Will they weaponize their mundane nail clippers?" Dr. Porp, a longtime proponent of observation over hasty retreat, interjected, "Perhaps we shouldn't jump to conclusions. This apparatus might be benign." Benign? Quilk's voice cracked, laced with incredulity. If it's so harmless, why does it generate temperatures sufficient to vaporize a Gulen ice spider instantaneously? The council members gasped in unison. The vaporization of a Gulen ice spider was a feat no one, not even the Gulens themselves, had ever achieved. With a sigh, Porp activated the holographic display. Scrutinize the recording carefully, he instructed. The scene unfolded once more. The human woman, blissfully unaware of the galactic panic her actions had incited, flipped a switch, and the device hummed. Her hair, now a chaotic spectacle defying the laws of physics, shimmered. She concluded the demonstration with a thumbs-up gesture. Quilk's sphere deepened to a more vibrant orange, a clear indicator of his escalating hysteria. That gesture! An unmistakable symbol of conquest! Quilk exclaimed. It's merely a sign of approval, Porp corrected, his tone betraying a lack of conviction. I demand a thorough investigation. Quilk declared. We shall dispatch a delegation to Earth to examine this monstrosity firsthand. We will demand explanations and perhaps even seek a protective order. The declaration was met with hesitant approval. No one relished the prospect of visiting Earth, but neither did they wish to bear the responsibility of ignoring what seemed to be a potentially catastrophic scenario. Thus, a small team was assembled, VZE, the overeager discoverer of the video, Labor, who had already preemptively retreated to his escape pod, and Porp, who grumbled about his ill-advised career choices. Their mission was unambiguous: infiltrate Earth, observe the perilous thermal device, and determine whether humans intended to incinerate the galaxy intentionally or, more plausibly, inadvertently. As the Prudent Retreat readied for its voyage to Earth, Quilk issued a final warning. Do not underestimate the humans, he cautioned. They inhabit a world where fire descends from the sky, their oceans teem with formidable predators, and they willingly consume molten cheese atop bread. These creatures are unbalanced. VZE swallowed nervously, Labor whimpered softly, and Porp adjusted his floating sphere, contemplating the merits of retirement on a serene asteroid moon. With engines humming anxiously, the Prudent Retreat vanished into the vast emptiness of space, leaving behind a wake of uncertainty, apprehension, and the unsettling realization that the galaxy might be entirely unprepared for the utter strangeness awaiting them on Earth. The Prudent Retreat humming like an overworked appliance, materialized from hyperspace just beyond Earth's orbit. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with tension. VZE, glued to his console, scanned for immediate dangers, rogue asteroids, bursts of radiation, or worse, humans wielding their heat cannons. Labor, meanwhile, remained sequestered within his escape pod, observing the outside world through a small porthole. Dr. Porp floated in the center of the command sphere, radiating an air of profound exasperation. We've traversed half the galaxy, he said, his words directed at no one in particular, to study a device humans employ on their heads. If we survive this ordeal, I'm taking an extended sabbatical. Assuming sabbaticals are still an option after they've potentially scorched the galaxy to a crisp. From the safety of his escape pod, Labor's voice piped up, they won't completely incinerate the galaxy. They won't incinerate the galaxy, Porp conceded, massaging his temples wearily. They'll merely scorch it, at worst. After several cautious orbits, the delegation decided it was time to initiate contact. VZE proposed a prudent course of action: land in a secluded area, observe the humans from a safe distance, and perhaps transmit an automated message politely requesting they refrain from incinerating anyone. This suggestion was immediately vetoed by Porp, who pointed out that humans were unlikely to respect requests from a delegation too timid to even disembark their spacecraft. So, naturally, they landed in the middle of a bustling human settlement. Their craft descended into a parking lot behind a building labeled Hare Haven, its neon sign flickering ominously. VZE squinted at the lettering. Why would they designate a building a sanctuary for hare, he pondered. Because the hare needs a place to seek refuge, Labor whispered, his antennae quivering nervously. That's absurd, Porp muttered, although not entirely implausible considering the peculiarities of this species. The hatch hissed open, and the 3 TE xenobiologists descended, hovering slightly above the asphalt. The air was thick with the scent of human activity, fried food, petroleum, and a faint undercurrent of something best described as reckless abandon. As they approached the building, a human female emerged, carrying a cylindrical cup bearing a green logo. She wore an apron emblazoned with the words "Here today, gone tomorrow." "Hi there," she called out cheerfully, her voice as friendly as it was loud. "You folks lost? Convention's downtown." The xenobiologists froze. VZE cleared his throat, a sound resembling a water pump struggling to function. "We are here to discuss a matter of galactic importance," he began, attempting to project authority. "Oh, honey, you need a haircut? Or just a shampoo?" she inquired, taking a sip from her cup. "We've got a 2-for-1 special going on." Porp floated forward, his sphere glowing faintly. "Madam," he said with deliberate calm, "we are emissaries from the Xenobiologist Confederation, sent to investigate your species' peculiar technological advancements. Specifically, the heat device." Her eyes widened slightly. "The heat? Oh, you mean a hairdryer?" "Yes," VZE exclaimed, his voice cracking. "The hairdryer. A device capable of producing deadly levels of thermal output. We demand an explanation." The woman blinked, then laughed, a loud, unguarded laugh that echoed off the building. "You'll think a hairdryer is a weapon? Oh, bless your hearts." VZE looked to Porp, who shrugged. From the safety of his emergency pod, Labor whispered, "She's mocking us. It's a war tactic, I read about it." The woman stepped closer, setting her cup on a nearby ledge. "Look, I don't know what you folks are up to, but if you want to see how it works, come on in. I'll show you." This was the worst-case scenario. The xenobiologists had anticipated hostility, subterfuge, perhaps even laser fire. But an invitation to observe the weapon up close was unnervingly bold. Still, refusing might offend the humans, which Porp had calculated was statistically more dangerous than agreeing. Inside the salon, the delegation was greeted by a cacophony of buzzing clippers, gurgling shampoo bottles, and a human child in the corner loudly declaring, "I don't want a haircut." The woman, who introduced herself as Mandy, led them to a station where a sleek black hairdryer rested. She picked it up casually, as if it weren't the most dangerous object in the known universe. "So, this little guy's got 3 settings, low, high, and turbo." "Turbo," VZE whispered, his antennae curling. "Always turbo." Mandy plugged the device into the wall, and the xenobiologists instinctively ducked. "Relax," she said, flipping the switch. The hairdryer roared to life, sending a gust of hot air that made the xenobiologists flinch. Mandy pointed it at her own head nonchalantly, drying her hair as if she weren't wielding a weapon of mass destruction. "See? Just for drying hair. Nothing scary," she said over the whirring noise. Porp leaned closer, his curiosity briefly overriding his caution. "But why subject yourself to such peril?" "Peril?" Mandy laughed again, switching the dryer off. "Honey, it's just air. You aliens need to chill." The xenobiologist delegation huddled outside the salon, visibly shaken. "It's worse than we thought," Labor said, emerging from his pod only to clutch VZE's arm. "They don't even recognize the danger." Or, Porp muttered, "they're so accustomed to it, it no longer phases them." VZE shuddered. "Either way, this species is utterly terrifying." And with that, they began drafting their report, The Humans and Their Heat-Based Atrocities. The hatch hissed open, revealing the 3 xenobiologists hovering slightly above the asphalt. The air was thick with the aroma of human activity, fried food, gasoline fumes, and a subtle undercurrent of something best described as reckless abandon. As they cautiously approached the hair haven, a human female emerged, carrying a cylindrical cup adorned with a green emblem. Her apron bore the inscription "Here today, gone tomorrow," which VZE found deeply unsettling. "Hi there," she called out, her voice as warm as it was loud. "You folks lost? The convention's downtown." The xenobiologists froze, stunned by her casual demeanor in the presence of such obvious danger. VZE cleared his throat, a sound akin to a malfunctioning water pump. "We are here to discuss a matter of galactic importance," he began, striving to project an air of authority. "Oh, honey, you need a haircut? Or just a shampoo?" she inquired, taking a sip from her cup. "We've got a 2-for-1 special going on today." Porp floated forward, his sphere emitting a faint glow. "Madam," he stated with practiced calm, "we are emissaries from the Xenobiologist Confederation, dispatched to investigate your species' unusual technological developments. Specifically, the thermal device." Her eyes widened slightly. "The thermal, oh, you mean a hairdryer?" "Yes," VZE exclaimed, his voice cracking with a mixture of fear and relief. "The hairdryer. A device capable of generating lethal levels of heat. We demand an explanation." The woman blinked, then erupted into laughter, a loud, unrestrained sound that echoed off the building's facade. "You'll think a hairdryer is a weapon? Bless your hearts." VZE glanced at Porp, who merely shrugged. From the perceived safety of his emergency pod, Labor whispered, "She's mocking us. It's a psychological warfare tactic. I read about it." The woman stepped closer, placing her cup on a nearby ledge. "Look, I don't know what you folks are up to, but if you want to see how it works, come on in. I'll give you a demonstration." This was a worst-case scenario. The xenobiologists had anticipated hostility, deception, perhaps even an energy weapon attack. But an invitation to observe the weapon up close was unnervingly brazen. Still, declining might offend the humans, which, according to Porp's calculations, was statistically more dangerous than accepting. Inside the salon, the delegation was assaulted by a cacophony of buzzing clippers, gurgling shampoo bottles, and the wails of a human child vehemently protesting a haircut. The woman, who introduced herself as Mandy, led them to a station where a sleek, black hairdryer lay innocently on the counter. She picked it up casually, as if it weren't the most perilous object in the known galaxy. "So, this little guy's got 3 settings, low, high, and turbo." "Turbo," VZE whispered, his antennae curling involuntarily. "Always turbo." Mandy plugged the device into the wall socket, and the xenobiologists instinctively ducked, bracing for the worst. "Relax," she said, flipping the switch. The hairdryer roared to life, emitting a blast of hot air that made the xenobiologists flinch. Mandy nonchalantly aimed it at her own head, drying her hair as if she weren't wielding an instrument of potential planetary destruction. "See? Just for drying hair. Nothing to be afraid of," she said over the whirring noise. Porp leaned closer, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. "But why subject oneself to such potential harm?" "Harm?" Mandy laughed again, switching the dryer off. "Honey, it's just air. Y'all aliens need to relax." The xenobiologist delegation huddled outside the salon, visibly shaken. "It's worse than we imagined," Labor declared, emerging from his pod only to cling to VZE's arm. "They don't even comprehend the danger." Or, Porp muttered, "they're so accustomed to it, it no longer affects them." VZE shuddered. "Either way," he concluded, "this species is absolutely terrifying." And with that, they began composing their preliminary report, the humans and their heat-based activities of concern. Their report, tentatively titled Preliminary Observations of the Hair Weapon-Wielding Deathworlders, remained incomplete as they stood frozen outside the salon. Mandy, the human who had just demonstrated the terrifying hairdryer, was now beckoning them back inside. "You can't just leave. You haven't seen the curling irons yet." VZE visibly paled, which was quite a feat for a species already the color of uncooked tofu. Labor squeaked something unintelligible and darted back towards his pod. Porp, as the designated leader of the expedition, adjusted his translation device and turned to Mandy. We must respectfully decline further demonstrations of your heat-based technologies," he stammered, "for safety reasons." "Safety?" Mandy clutched her stomach, letting out another booming laugh. "Honey, you're not going to get hurt. You don't even have hair." "That's what makes it even more dangerous," VZE muttered, clinging to Porp for support. As Mandy retreated back into the salon, Porp gave the delegation a significant look. "We have to document more," he insisted. "The council will demand specifics." Labor peeked out of his pod. "Why not just leave? File an incomplete report. Say it was too dangerous. No one would doubt us." "Because," Porp sighed, "if we don't gather sufficient evidence, Quilk will accuse us of cowardice, again." VZE groaned. "Fine. But no curling irons. No straighteners. If she pulls out anything called a steam wand, I'm leaving." They reluctantly followed Mandy back inside. The salon, by human standards, was a relatively calm space. This fact was entirely lost on the TE xenobiologists, who interpreted the buzzing, spraying, and snipping of scissors as clear indicators of impending chaos. Mandy had them sit in 3 rotating chairs designed for human clients, which spun slightly whenever one of the TE xenobiologists shifted their weight. "All right," Mandy began, picking up a round object covered in bristles. "This is a hairbrush. Not scary, right?" The TE xenobiologists nodded cautiously. "And this," she continued, holding up what looked like a futuristic stick with a red light at the tip, "is a straightener." VZE raised a trembling hand. "Does it emit heat?" "Of course it does," Mandy replied, as if this were the most normal thing in the universe. "Otherwise, how would it work?" "I knew it." Labor yelped, attempting to squeeze himself further into his emergency pod, despite already being completely encased within it. As Mandy attempted to explain the perfectly reasonable nature of heated hair styling tools, the TE xenobiologists quietly plotted their escape. VZE, however, found his attention drawn to a rack of colorful bottles near the front counter. They bore labels like volcanic volume and thermal shine. "Those," he whispered to Porp, "must be the fuel for their weapons." Porp, his tone thick with weary sarcasm, countered, "Or, they are for shampooing, whatever that entails." Mandy, noticing their puzzled stares, walked over to the rack and grabbed a bottle. "Oh, you want to try this? It's great for volume." Volume, VZE repeated, a word that could mean anything from sound amplification to catastrophic explosions. "Perhaps we should test it outside," Porp suggested, edging towards the door. "Oh, it's totally safe," Mandy assured them, unscrewing the cap. "Here, smell." She held the open bottle towards VZE, who recoiled, expecting a noxious plume of chemicals. Instead, a pleasant floral scent wafted towards him. "This," he said cautiously, "isn't a weapon?" "Of course not," Mandy said, rolling her eyes. "It's conditioner. Helps with tangles." "Tangles," Labor mumbled, peeking out from his pod. "A likely euphemism for hostages." "No one's taking hostages," Mandy exclaimed. "Y'all are more paranoid than my Aunt Charlene after her 5th espresso." Just as the delegation was beginning to relax, or as close to relaxed as TE xenobiologists could manage, a new sound erupted from the back of the salon. It was a high-pitched whistle followed by a low rumble, as if the fabric of reality itself was hiccuping. "What is that?" VZE shouted, clutching the armrests of his chair. "Oh, that's just the hot towel steamer," Mandy said with a casual wave of her hand. "Keeps the towels nice and warm for facials." The TE xenobiologists froze. "Facials?" Porp asked, his voice unnaturally high. "You know, for the face." Before anyone could stop him, Labor bolted from his pod and scrambled towards the exit. "We're going to lose our faces," he screamed. Mandy blinked. "He's not all there, is he?" Porp let out a long, weary sigh. "No," he replied. "And soon, neither will we." As the delegation regrouped outside, a mix of terror and utter bewilderment etched on their faces, Mandy emerged from the salon, brandishing the hairdryer in one hand and the straightener in the other. "Hey, wait," she called out, seemingly oblivious to their petrified state. "I didn't even show you the diffuser attachment." Porp raised all 6 of his limbs in a gesture of surrender. "No more attachments," he pleaded. "No more demonstrations. For the love of everything non-flammable, please." Mandy tilted her head, a look of confusion on her face, but undeterred. "Suit yourselves," she said, retreating back into the salon. "You aliens are weird. Weird, but kinda fun." The TE xenobiologists huddled near their ship, each one shaken to their core. "They're maniacs," VZE whispered, his antennae twitching uncontrollably. "Absolute maniacs. And we've only seen their hair technology," Porp muttered, a chilling thought occurring to him. "Imagine their foot technology." Labor nodded solemnly. "I don't want to imagine." With a collective shudder, they boarded the prudent retreat determined to file their most alarming report yet. Inside the prudent retreat controlled chaos reigned. Or, more accurately, the TE xenobiologist version of controlled chaos, which involved a great deal of frantic whispering and 3 separate, unplanned fire drills. VZE had barricaded himself in the research bay, surrounded by holographic screens replaying the salon's horrors. Labor sat curled up in his emergency pod, scribbling what appeared to be his last will and testament on a napkin. Porp, meanwhile, paced the command deck, his sphere glowing faintly as he formulated their next move. "We have no choice," Porp announced, addressing no one in particular. "We must recommend an immediate embargo on all human technology, beginning with these infernal heat devices." VZE's voice crackled over the intercom. "We can't just embargo them. What if they retaliate?" "Retaliate with what asterisk?" Porp snapped, his sphere flickering with anxiety. "Hairdryers? Curling irons? Are we to be styled into submission?" "It's not impossible," Labor piped up from his pod. "They could strap the devices to some kind of hair-based war machine." Porp groaned, pressing his limbs against his sphere in frustration. "We need facts, not fantasies. VZE, compile a list of all known human heat devices. Labor, draft a contingency plan in case they attack with," he hesitated, "blow dryers." "That's ridiculous," VZE countered over the intercom. "We'd never survive long enough to implement a contingency plan." As the ship orbited Earth, the delegation's paranoia deepened. Every transmission from the planet seemed to confirm their worst fears. News broadcasts spoke of heated debates, a clear reference to thermal warfare. Hot new trends undoubtedly meant weaponized fashion. Burnout in the workplace, a chilling euphemism for mass casualties. "Look at this!" VZE exclaimed, projecting a video clip onto the main holographic screen. It showed humans gathered around glowing metal boxes, pulling out slabs of charred meat. "What are they doing?" Labor whispered, his voice trembling. "Cooking," VZE replied grimly. "They subject their food to extreme heat before consuming it. It's a ritual of dominance. Probably a message to their prey, 'We will cook you next.'" Porp rubbed his temples. "Enough. We're spiraling. This is why I don't watch human media." Their morbid observations were interrupted by an unexpected beep from the communications console. A message appeared on the screen. From Mandy. Subject, "Forgot to show you the diffuser." "How does she have our contact frequency?" Labor shrieked, his antennae vibrating wildly. "She probably reverse-engineered it using hairdryer science." VZE shouted, throwing his hands up in exasperation. Porp glared at the screen. "This is bad. If they can find us, they can invite us back." A long silence followed, broken only by the sound of Labor nervously chewing on the edge of his napkin. As panic reached a fever pitch, Porp convened an emergency meeting in the strategy bay. The agenda: how to prevent human technology from contaminating the galaxy. The conclusions, however, were far from unanimous. "We should evacuate," Labor suggested, his voice trembling. "Seal the planet off and pretend we never saw it." "That's cowardice," Porp retorted, his sphere glowing with frustration. "The Council expects action, not retreat." "Fine," Labor snapped. "Let's bombard the planet. Just a few orbital strikes to take out their heat factories. We don't even know where the heat factories are VZE interjected. Well, they're clearly not in that Hair Havener place. Enough! Porp barked, his sphere now glowing a vibrant red. We need a plan that doesn't involve mass destruction or running away like frightened Larry. Good luck with that, VZE muttered under his breath. Eventually, a compromise was reached. They would propose a galactic containment policy. No TE xenobiologist, or any other species for that matter, would be allowed to interact with humans until further notice. To enforce this, the TE xenobiologists would install warning beacons around Earth, broadcasting a simple, universal message: warning, planet inhabited by reckless heat enthusiasts. Do not approach. The delegation began drafting the official document. Porp handled the formal language, VZE annotated it with diagrams of human technology, and Labor occasionally chimed in with helpful comments like, "Make sure to mention the towels." Those were unsettling. Their work was interrupted by a clunking noise from the docking bay. What was that? VZE whispered, his antennae twitching nervously. Nothing good, Labor replied, already halfway back to his pod. Porp activated the surveillance cameras. The screen showed a figure walking through the docking bay, holding a familiar cylindrical object. "It's her!" VZE whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's Mandy! She's here to destroy us!" Labor moaned, rocking back and forth in his pod. But as the figure stepped closer, they saw it wasn't Mandy. It was a humanoid droid, painted bright pink and wearing a sash that read Salon Ambassador 3000. "Hello," the droid chirped. "Mandy sends her regards and hopes you'll accept this gift." It held up a brand new Turbo X Pro 3000, now with ionic technology. The TE xenobiologists screamed in unison. The droid departed, leaving the hairdryer on the docking bay floor where it sat like an unexploded ordnance. The delegation huddled at a safe distance, their spherical containment units bobbing nervously as they debated their next course of action. "We must eject it into space," VZE insisted, his antennae twitching erratically. "But what if it detonates?" Labor countered, his voice barely a whisper. "Then we'll all have voluminous hair," Porp muttered, rubbing his temples wearily. After a protracted and anxious discussion, they agreed to store the hairdryer in the ship's containment vault, labeling it Exhibitor in their ongoing report. The Turbo X Pro 3000 sat in the vault, a silent but ominous testament to humanity's unsettling affinity for potentially catastrophic technology. VZE, who had reluctantly been assigned to monitor it, stared at the glowing containment field with a mixture of apprehension and morbid curiosity. "I don't like it," he muttered, pacing back and forth. "It's a hairdryer, VZE," Porp said from the observation deck above, his tone laced with exhaustion. "You've been watching it for hours. It hasn't moved." "That's what's so worrying," VZE snapped, gesturing towards the hairdryer. "That's how they lull you into a false sense of security. First they sit there, all innocent-like, and then *bam*, they're drying hair and incinerating entire civilizations." Porp sighed, "Hairdryers don't incinerate civilizations, VZE. And they certainly don't have faces to incinerate." "Tell that to the towels," VZE grumbled, still unconvinced. The tense standoff was abruptly interrupted by the ship's AI, a perpetually anxious program named Claver. "Warning," it chirped, its synthesized voice echoing through the ship. "Unauthorized energy fluctuation detected in containment field." "What?" VZE shrieked, leaping away from the vault. "It's activating." Porp, who had just taken a sip of his nutrient slurry, promptly spat it out in shock. "It doesn't even have a power source. How is it activating?" "Perhaps it's drawing energy from the containment field itself," Labor suggested, peering nervously into the vault from a safe distance. "Like some sort of parasitic energy vampire." "You're not helping, Labor," Porp snapped, descending to the vault level. The three TE xenobiologists gathered around the console, staring at the readings in disbelief. The hairdryer's power output was steadily climbing, its heating element glowing ominously through the containment field. "This is it," VZE whispered, his antennae quivering uncontrollably. This is how it begins. First the hairdryer, then the galaxy. Calm down, VZE, Porp said, though his voice betrayed his own escalating anxiety. We'll eject it into space before it can. Before he could finish his sentence, the containment field flickered and collapsed with a loud crack. The hairdryer tumbled to the floor with an anticlimactic thud. For a moment, no one moved. It's dormant, Labor ventured cautiously. Or it's luring us into a false sense of security, VZE hissed, clutching his console. Porp, against his better judgment, cautiously approached the hairdryer. He extended a trembling limb, nudging the device with the tip of his appendage. It didn't react. It's just a machine, he said, more to himself than the others. No heat, no threat. See? As if on cue, the hairdryer roared to life. It's alive! VZE screamed, diving behind a console. The hairdryer, now inexplicably active, blasted a stream of hot air across the room. Paper scattered, instruments toppled, and Labor fled back to his escape pod, yelling something about the imminent onset of thermal warfare. Porp struggled to maintain his composure. It's just malfunctioning, he shouted. Someone shut it down. You shut it down. VZE countered, clutching a chair like a shield. The ship's AI helpfully chimed in again. Warning, atmospheric pressure destabilizing in vault chamber. What does that even mean? Labor shrieked from inside his pod. It means the hairdryer is winning. VZE yelled back. The situation deteriorated rapidly as the hairdryer began spinning in circles, its turbo mode apparently engaging on its own. The gusts of air it produced intensified, rattling the walls and creating a miniature cyclone within the chamber. We have to do something. Porp shouted over the din. VZE, despite his terror, spotted an opportunity. The emergency vent controls, he yelled. If we can push it into the airlock, before he could finish, the hairdryer zipped past him, ricocheting off the walls like a hyperactive insect. Why does it have turbo propulsion? Labor screamed. It doesn't. Porp yelled back. It's just physics. Physics is the worst. VZE cried. In a moment of desperation, VZE activated the emergency vent sequence. Alarms blared, and a panel opened in the floor, revealing a direct path to the airlock. Now what? Porp asked, dodging a particularly aggressive blast of hot air. Now we heard it, VZE said, grabbing a nearby broom. Heard it? It's not a Gilanian fuzzbeast. Do you have a better idea? What followed was a scene so absurd it would forever be etched in xenobiologist history. The three delegates scrambled around the chamber, using anything they could find, brooms, chairs, even Labor's emergency pod, to guide the rogue hairdryer towards the vent. The device fought back valiantly, switching between heat settings and creating unpredictable gusts of air. At one point, it nearly escaped through an open hatch, but Porp managed to slam it shut just in time. Almost there. VZE shouted, sweat beading on his brow. Why am I sweating? Labor wailed from within his pod. Because it's a hairdryer. VZE yelled back. With one final, desperate shove, they managed to push the hairdryer into the vent. The device tumbled down the shaft, its whirring noises fading as it approached the airlock. Seal it! Porp barked. VZE slammed his appendage against the control panel, and the airlock doors closed with a satisfying thud. A moment later, the outer hatch opened, ejecting the hairdryer into the void of space. The chamber fell silent. Is it gone? Labor asked cautiously, emerging from his pod. Yes, Porp said, collapsing against the wall. It's gone. VZE stared out the viewport, watching as the hairdryer drifted away, still faintly glowing. You know, he said quietly, they'll probably just build another one. Then we'll leave a warning beacon, Porp said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. The galaxy deserves to know. And what will the warning say? Labor asked. Porp thought for a moment, then sighed. Just 3 words, fear the hairdryer.